we are in the middle of Pride Month right now, and the need to protect and uplift the LGBTQ plus community has never felt more urgent. New data from GLAAD's 2025 Alert Desk report reveals a chilling surge in anti-LGBTQ violence, with nearly 1,000 documented incidents in the past year alone, including threats and physical attacks on members of the community, public officials, and educators. So at the forefront of the fight for LGBTQ plus rights is Sarah Kate Ellis, the president and CEO of GLAAD, the world's LGBTQ plus media advocacy organization, and she joins us now. Sarah Kate, thank you so much for joining, and thank you for the great work that you do.
Thank you. Happy Pride, Don.
Happy Pride to you as well. So let's start with this 2025 Alert Desk report. It says 932 anti-LGBTQ plus incidents in 1 year. That is staggering. What do these numbers tell you about the moment that we're living in right now?
Just to put that into context for you too, that's about 2.5 attacks a day on the community. So this tells me that the rhetoric that's being ginned up by anti-LGBTQ activists is giving permission slips to folks to be violent and threatening against our community. And when we look at the leadership of America now, we should be looking at someone who is tamping that down and bringing that down, not escalating that and driving it. And so I think, we're as a community caught in the crosshairs.
So look, I want to ask you about, you remember the election, the whole trans issue, right? That was so huge during the election. This same report shows that more than half of these incidents are targeted. They target trans, gender, and non-conforming people, and gender non-conforming people. Why are they experiencing such violence? Is it political rhetoric? Again, that was one of the biggest issues during the campaign. I can't understand why, but man, the right surely capitalized on it.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things that are happening here. One is that such a small minority of Americans say they know someone who's trans. It was a year ago, 30% of Americans said they knew someone who's trans. And now that number has actually dropped down to 23% of Americans say they know someone who's trans. What we know is that you can't hate somebody whose story you know or the people that you know. And in the LGB movement, that's how we moved and changed hearts and minds, was by coming out and sharing who we are. The trans community, first and foremost, is a very small population in this country. And secondly, the stories that are being told, so that void of 75% of people who say they don't know a trans person is being filled with misinformation, lies, and rhetoric, and targeting this community. So there is no surprise that violence is up against the trans and gender nonconforming community at all, based on what's going on in American society and culture today, and how misinformation is being used to target them. But Don, our community has always been used as a political wedge issue. We've always been politicized as opposed to humanized. And if we were humanized, people knew our stories and knew that we want the same things. Our new accelerating acceptance research shows overwhelmingly that LGBTQ Americans and non-LGBTQ Americans, I think it's like 87%, want the exact same things. So I think this anti-LGBTQ movement is small but loud. And what they've done is they're trying to isolate us out of the American population and make us other and different, as opposed to we share the same American values of freedom, family, and fairness. And it's been deadly to our community.
Are you concerned? Look, we've known each other for a long time, and I thought, like, after marriage equality that things were getting better, and I think they were getting better. But does it feel like it's gone backwards, especially with the Trump administration, especially with the attack on transgender people? Because again, as you said, there's such a small percentage of the population, and I think obviously we should be treating everyone like human beings. But I feel like we've slid backwards somehow, and that scares me, Sarah.
Well, definitely we've slid backwards, but I just 10 years ago, Americans didn't even know who transgender people were. So I think that this is in direct response to the progress that we've made. And the point here is that we can't let these anti-LGBTQ activists divide our community. We have to stay solid and together and continue to move forward. And we will prevail as a community because we're not looking for anything special. We're just looking to be equal.
Yeah.
And most Americans, super majority of Americans, believe that we should be treated equally and fairly.
Let me ask you this, and this is, I'm just giving you truth. I hear people, even liberal people, even supporters of the LGBTQ plus community, allies, saying, you know what, Democrats have to get off of that trans stuff because it's causing us to lose. The messaging has to be something different. What do you say to that? And I know you've heard it.
I've heard it a million times. Democrats aren't on the trans thing. Republicans are all over the trans thing. I mean, Trump spent $250 million on ads against transgender Americans in several weeks. I think it was 6 weeks. You couldn't watch a football game without an anti-trans coming up. My thing is, Republicans need to get off the LGBTQ and especially the trans thing. It's not going to work for them long term. It's been a one moment where they're actually gaining ground and creating fear with misinformation and lies, but it's not a long-term strategy. We've proven that time and time again. So I argue back, Democrats aren't on the trans thing. Democrats are trying to protect everyday Americans. And Republicans, specifically MAGA, or I guess all of Republicans are kind of MAGA now.
It's all
Um,
MAGA. They're the MAGA
it's
party
all
right
MAGA
now.
all the
Yeah.
time. And they're the ones that are obsessed with transgender people.
Yeah. So how do you message that? What do you tell the Democrats? Because again, they have to win. If it's an issue that is hurting, that's problematic. But I don't think Democrats are going to abandon transgender people at all. If Democrats are in office, Sarah Kate, you know that means that transgender people, members of the LGBTQIA plus community, are going to be protected by the Democrats. But if it's a problem in messaging, that's an issue. Are you advising Democrats and what to say and how to reply to things like that?
We're a nonpartisan organization, but we are actually just did a really deep dive into the media ecosystem. And then we did another huge segmentation on the movable middle of America. And we've looked at where those movables are on issues, and they're actually not anti-trans. They are confused and they are flooded with misinformation. So my recommendation and what I say is that we have to get back to shared values of family freedom and fairness, and Democrats need to focus messaging on that and not take the bait with these folks who are trying to whose anti-trans rhetoric is really
Mhm.
dangerous. I think it's really important. It's not, we don't have to sell out anyone to advance another's rights. And I think we don't see the world oftentimes as plentiful and abundant, and there's enough for everyone. And I think we should protect the most marginalized, but
Mhm.
we didn't make this an issue. They've made this an issue.
Mhm.
Trans people were existing freely in society since society was founded. It is
Right.
why all of a sudden is this such a big issue. This is such a big issue because the Republicans can't seem to find a platform other than pushing down marginalized people, immigrants and LGBTQ people, to raise themselves up. And they use this. It's very effective, obviously. They're taking from you. I haven't taken from anybody. You haven't taken from anybody. We're contributors to society. So we need to reframe how they're framing us. And
Yeah.
that I do talk a lot about, how to reframe the conversation. I think also for businesses, I want to talk a little bit about that as
Yeah,
well.
I want to talk about corporate pride, but I just want to get finish this, tie this up in a bow as it relates to this environment that we're in right now. And I know that GLAAD is a nonpartisan institution, right? I know that you're nonpartisan, but we have lawmakers that are using this LGBTQ plus community, using it as a cudgel. And I wonder how much responsibility you think political leaders have here, particularly the Trump administration. How do they bear for creating an environment that fosters this kind of hate? You have to call it out, whether it's a Democrat or Republican. It happens to be the MAGA folks right now. How much of a
Yeah.
responsibility do you think they have for creating this environment?
Full. I mean, full
Full. Okay.
responsibility.
Yeah.
I put it all on them because they, instead of coming at this with curiosity and wanting to learn about their fellow Americans, what they've
Hmm.
done is come at their fellow Americans to attack them and further marginalize them. You would think that they would want to, I'm a big believer in all boats rise. And I think the current administration's tactic is that it's either you or me. And that's
Hmm.
not how we function as Americans. In America, we start our Constitution with we, the people, not
Hmm.
I, the person.
Yeah.
And this has been definitely pitting each other against each other while there is so much corruption going on. So it's like, we could talk, we've spent now, however, 10 minutes talking about trans people
Hmm.
versus talking about the real issues that
Yeah.
matter to everyday Americans. Trans people are not it. And
Yeah.
so this has been a wildly successful distraction for them.
As it relates then to the community and what you do, what's the real issue? What are the real issues you think?
I think the real issue for our community
Yeah.
or America as a whole, or
However you want to respond.
well, the real issue for our community now is the attack on the trans community,
Yeah.
right? And how they're using that as a way to come after our marriages, our families. They are coming for everything. And I mean, Clarence Thomas signaled it. He didn't even signal it. He said it during the Roe v. Wade, during Dobbs, that, they should look at Obergefell. Now, what they want, what the dream is that if they turn our community on itself and try and separate and divide us, that they'll be able to deconstruct every right that we've hard fought won rights that we have. But also the bigger distraction is that as a community, we're still not protected at the federal level. In a lot of states, you can still be fired for being LGBTQ. These are very fragile rights that we have at this moment in time. Conversion therapy, they're re-looking at the state level at some of the states. Conversion therapy, it is a known horrible practice that creates that leads to attempted suicide, that leads to a horrible life for folks.
Mhm.
Conversion therapy is when they think that they can, pray the gay out of you, or you know put you through therapy until you're
Put you
not
through
gay
therapy
anymore.
or this educational process that'll somehow make you not gay.
Yeah,
Okay, whatever. That does not work. But it's
yeah.
also, we're laughing, but it's very traumatizing, and it
Oh,
has
it's
mental and, quite frankly, physical repercussions for people who, you know what I mean? Because in your mind, you get all messed up, and then it can do things to you physically. It can it can be detrimental to your health. The conversion therapy thing is ridiculous. And at one time, I believe Mike Pence believed in conversion therapy,
mhm.
whatever. Stand by for a word from our sponsors. Today's Lemon Drop is brought to you by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. It's summer, campfires, late night conversations. People are swapping stories. But lately, one group is trying to control the whole story, claiming that the U.S. was founded as a Christian nation and pushing their religion into classrooms, into courtrooms, and even into our doctor's office. In Arizona, voters just protected abortion rights in the state constitution, but politicians are trying to undermine it anyway. Things like this are happening all over our country. This isn't about personal beliefs, it's about power, and it's all happening under the banner of Christian nationalism. That's where the Freedom from Religion Foundation comes in. They have been defending church-state separation since 1978 in the courts, in the schools, and wherever religion tries to take the wheel. If you believe government should serve everyone, not just the religious right, join them. Go to ffrf.us/freedom or text DON to 511-511 and become a member today. Just go to ffrf.us/freedom and text DON to 511-511 now, because the only story that should run this country is ours, not theirs. Text fees may apply. Let's move on, if we will, because I want to talk to you about corporate pride. And that's a big issue now. You see corporations pulling back on on pride, initiatives and initiatives that'll help our community.
I
What is
mean,
going on here?
I think it's more a media play than it's an actual
It
real
is.
problem. Yeah, I mean, if you look at Dom, if you look at like the trajectory of every pride and what the media plays on, it's always some kind of drama. A few years ago when there were all these corporates participating in pride, it was about pink washing or rainbow washing, and that they really didn't care about our community and all of that. Now they're all pulling out. Well, they're not all pulling out. Actually, there's a 10% increase in some. What they are doing is they don't want to be targeted by this administration. And what this administration has done is taken DEI, which is actually a growth strategy for companies, and it's companies freedom to cultivate talent, attract talent, and grow their business. And they've targeted that. So what companies have done is stepped away from um, visually that, but most have not stepped away from the actual practice.
Yeah.
I talk to CEOs all the time, and I mean, I know my team was counting on the first 24 hours of Pride. There were over 100 companies who were participating in Pride in day one, the first
Mm.
24 hours, June 1st to June 2nd. There's no serious pullback in Pride. I think it is. Are there tariffs now? Are there other concerns? Yes, but companies know that if they are going to grow, they have to target growth segments. They have to target Black and Brown people. They have to target LGBTQ people in order to grow their business and to attract the best talent and be competitive. So I think that this is about corporate freedom, and the media is getting that headline wrong. This is
Mm.
about the administration coming after corporate freedom, not that corporates are pulling away from pride. I was just at P&G this past week. I mean, they're full on in. They understand how it's tied to their business and that they can't walk away from our community. They might do it differently so that it can't be targeted the way it's being targeted
Are
by
they
this
quieter
administration.
about it?
I wouldn't say quieter. It's actually what we've always
Stealthy?
asked for. It's Well, yeah. I mean, you don't want to have like this DEI department because
Because you
that
don't want to
is
have a
just,
target on, right? You
yeah,
don't want to. And speaking of target, but you don't want to have a target. So I think it's actually smart messaging, because I think, Sarah Kate, I can't go wherever I go. I'm out and about. I go to Spotify occasionally. I go to, I was at the Google and at YouTube, but wherever I go, I see so many I call them my brothers and sisters. I'm like, oh, hey. They're like, hey, I saw you and your husband. And I'm like, I saw you and your husband, you and your wife, or whatever. We are there. We're not going anywhere. So I don't understand, like, what is this initiative to drive people out? Even in the government, even there in the White House now, in politics now, there are so many freaking gay people there. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't
I
understand
do.
how they think they're going to get rid of us somehow, or marginalize us, or, try to write us out of, the U.S. Constitution, so to speak. I don't know how that's going to happen. I don't think it will, but
I
they're
don't think it
trying.
will. I think this is a concerted effort, and I I think that there are a lot of headaches right now that companies have,
Mm-hmm.
and this administration seeks retribution and targets people and companies, and
Mm-hmm.
so they want to stay out of the fray because they have to protect their
Yeah.
shareholders. Um, and I think, but I don't, it's not at the expense of the LGBTQ community. At least I was in Davos during the inauguration, having conversations with CEOs. They're not moving away from this. They know they can't move away from it.
Mm.
What they are doing it is differently. And actually, the thing that we've always asked for is have it threaded throughout your business practice. It's got to be a part of your business to truly get to equity and parity. And so I think in some weird way, this administration is doing us a favor because it's making business leaders really think through how they're integrating it into the business itself.
Uh,
And we'll be better off on the other side of it.
yeah. Look, what you do, big part of what you do is media messaging.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, I think the media has fallen down on the job. They've been the knee too much to the Trump administration, especially the corporate media. So what do you say to the media? How do you get them to understand what you said? Do you think it's how they're messaging? Really, the media has it wrong. You said that. How do you get through to them, Sarah Kate?
You know, it, this media ecosystem is really changed dramatically. And you know that. I mean, you're at the front lines of that, Don. In our deep dive into this media ecosystem, what we realized fast and quickly was that actually Americans aren't getting their news from their traditional outlets where they used to get them, whether it be cable or newspaper. Where they are getting it through is through creators and influencers who are meeting them on a lifestyle basis, shared interests, shared values, and then sharing their political views with them. And that was what was so startling different in this last election. That traditional media is I mean, if you look at trust in America, and this is the Edelman Trust Barometer, Americans trust their CEOs more than they trust the media and the government.
Wow.
So that's why we focus so much on businesses now, because people are looking to them more so than to media to get their information. But also, it's these relationships, these podcast relationships, because they're not based on politics, they're based on entertainment, and then the entertainer or the podcaster or whomever then shares their political view. A great example everybody talks about is Joe Rogan, right? Like, Joe Rogan endorsed Bernie Sanders. He's a libertarian.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dems didn't give him the time of day. And Trump sat down with him for 3 hours, unscripted, unedited. And when you compare that to Kamala, who went on Call Her Daddy for an hour, they had to build her a new set and they negotiated every question in advance. Like, the authenticity isn't there. And I love Kamala. I'm not,
I
you know,
understand 100% what you're saying. Yeah, the
so
Democrats need to get it together. But go on.
yes, there has to be an authenticity and a
Right.
connective. So Trump got to spew lies, unfact checked, for 3 hours, and I think on the others, and that reached 60 million people, and then Rogan endorsed him the day before the election, whereas Call Her Daddy had her on and off, Alex Cooper, and never talked about it again. It reached 4 million people. So we have to look at these examples of how we're communicating with people. And I think that progressives fell asleep on the changes on the media ecosystem. Now, I also think that the MAGAs needed to create their own way to get their voice out of there, because they couldn't get it through traditional media, because traditional media relies on truth and facts. So there's a very big change that's happened in media right now, and I don't think that the traditional media companies have have really thought that through, because their shows would look very different. They don't look different. They
Yeah.
would have they would have content creators on there. They'd have influencers on. They have the same talking heads, and they say the same thing over and over again. Now, I think they're really important. The other piece is that progressive media, most of it, facts, political media, is behind a paywall. You have to pay for it. So the distribution is way less. Um, and it's also fact based. I mean, there's so many pieces to that. Um, so I think, and there's this whole thing about the Democratic, whatever, party is saying they need their Joe Rogan. It's like, no, you need to talk to Joe Rogan.
Uh-huh.
Don't now create another Frankenstein. Go talk to Joe and have a conversation. He's an open and person about the politics of America. Um, so I think that we're still not getting it right, and but we're improving. We're
Yeah,
improving.
but I think that on the for Democrats, if you want to talk about sort of the intersection between Democrats or progressives and media, I think Democrats have such a purity test, right? It's supposed to be the party that's open and forgiving. America's about restitution and about, freedom. But oftentimes they don't show that they believe that in their actions. And I think the media doesn't understand. The media does that somewhat as well. And they sometimes, when I was in traditional media, I would want to have someone who was a creator or someone that you don't see sitting on every cable news set come on, and they'd say, well, why would you have that person on? It's like, because they have something interesting to say, but nobody knows who they are. I'm like, well, you guys don't know who they are, but maybe someone will get to know them, have a great idea. And so maybe they're coming around to that, but I don't watch anymore. They're not, you say they're not. I watch creators, I watch streaming, I watch and listen to podcasts, and that's where I get most of the information. And I'm not sitting there watching the same thing as I'm flipping through one panel after the other, fighting, arguing, nothing gets accomplished, and they don't get to talk about issues in a way that we've been talking about now. We've been talking now for 20 plus minutes, almost 30 minutes. And you don't get that in traditional news. You got to get to the break, you get a 5 or 6 minute segment, and then you're done on to the next thing because they're looking for ratings. Right here, we're looking for truth, facts, and information, and for people to get to know you and me. We did a show on the protests this weekend that was just completely targeted towards the protests, not the parade. Somebody else can do the parade. We were very transparent and said, we're going to interview people in the protests. And we were just casual and normal, and we just talked about things, and we let people talk in the crowd. And it rated, at least on YouTube and on Substack, off the charts, because that's what people are hungry for. As you said, authenticity and no corporate influence about what you can and cannot say.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really important factor. Now, the other side to that is that because there's no rules or regulations around or expectations around
standards and practices where you must tell the truth. And but the thing I think that is good is that so many journalists from traditional, so many trained journalists from traditional media is coming over here, and we rely on truth and facts. Right. Yes. We just can't spew conspiracy theories. So I think that there's a good side of that. The more people leave traditional legacy media, they come over with their traditional media training where they believe in, there are standards and practices and rules that you have to, that you abide by. I think it'll get better on this side. I
agree. And I think it's also really about it. Framing is so important. And that's what, they have done so effectively against our community is how they framed us and isolated us and made us almost not Americans. I mean, we are othered, as they say. And I think scooping us in and making sure that it's understood that we are Americans and that the majority of this is a political issue, not a people issue. The majority of Americans are for LGBTQ people. The majority, the movable middle, in my research on the movable middle, the thing is that they're just confused. And that's something that's been very effective, is that they don't understand and they are open to understanding. And they do think that the anti-LGBTQ legislation is damaging to our community. Yeah. And so it's about meeting them where they are. The other thing is, Don, media isn't what it used to be, as we've been saying, but the forms of media. And when we look at this movable audience, they're listening to podcasts. They're getting their local news on social media, but they're still tuning into local news. So they're still turning on a TV. They video game as a family. So video games are the number one entertainment industry in the world. And that's an industry that we look at GLAAD because we understand its power, and that more Americans are on that than see a movie, than see a TV show or a streaming show. So I think we have to, and the number one thing that they all share in common in the movable middle is sports.
Wow.
The NFL is the number one.
I knew the video game. I talked to Kai Cenat, one of the biggest streamers in the world. I saw him at the Grammys, and I said, someone kind of new to this. What's your advice? And he goes, start streaming live, doing video games. And I said, okay. And I think he's 100% right. But before we get, I think it's interesting in sports because people think that members of the LGBTQ plus community are not interested in sports. I'm totally interested. I've watched the playoffs, the NBA playoffs, like religiously, right? I love the Knicks. I love the
Well, that's because the
Saints.
Knicks were in them. I haven't watched since they
You
sadly
haven't.
got out.
So what's your advice then to America, not just the LGBTQ plus community, but in this Pride Month, what's your advice to America right now? What do you say to people who are listening?
My advice is for Americans to continue being open and caring and understanding that this great country is all of our country, and it is the greatest experiment in the world, and it doesn't need to be ruled by cruelty. It can be ruled by love, and we can all have a shot. It doesn't mean that one gets it over you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we need to approach it like that. And I think this division and trying to divide us is a way for others to grab power and money while the people are left fighting each other.
Sarah Kate Ellis, that's good advice. President and CEO of GLAAD, the world's LGBTQ plus media advocacy organization. It's always a pleasure to see you and speak with you, and come back, please. Give us more advice and tell us how to do this thing, how to get through all of this.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you. I'll see you soon. Thanks everyone for watching. Your support means the world to us. So make sure you hit the like button and you subscribe to our channel to make sure that you never ever miss a video. We're live every day, 10 a.m. Eastern time. We drop even more content at 2 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you want more Don Lemon Show content, we'd love for you to become a member of the Lemon community, where you will receive access to special community posts. You'll get exclusive content and members-only live shows. So head over to our channel page or click the join button on this video. Again, thank you for watching. We appreciate your love and your support, and we will see you next time.